Dear listeners, welcome to the Aura Room. Today, we have Reginald Martin, who dives deep into the realms of paradoxical Heka and chemetaphysics, concepts that explore the intersections of energy, consciousness, and reality. Reginald's work challenges conventional thinking, offering a lens through which listeners can reimagine the nature of perception, power, and personal transformation. Reginald, hello. It's great to have you here.
Cheetah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So today we are going to dive deeper into the concept of chemetaphysics, which may be quite difficult to understand for a lot of other listeners. So for them, Reginald, can you explain the essence of paradoxical Heka and how it differs from traditional metaphysical practices?
Yeah, so the foundation of metaphysics and paradoxical Heka. So we're talking about two levels of really accessing the same knowledge and information. But metaphysics is the ancient Egyptian idea of the Ka, which is what we call the soul today. I like to call it essence, and the idea of metaphysics. So the philosophy of metaphysics. Okay, so for me, I call it we're connecting to our soul level operating system, and that's what metaphysics is about. So it's like the map that of connecting to our higher self, our energetic being, and just the different aspects of us as a whole being from an energetic perspective. Now, paradoxical Heka is like the processes that we can use to help keep us balanced, to help keep us, in line. Because a lot of ways that society operates today is that they really look at us in a way that we're broken, something's wrong with us, we need to be fixed. We need to aspire to becoming or connecting to our higher self and stuff like that. But from a comedic perspective, we are souls having a human experience. We don't have to do anything to be that. So it's not an aspirational type of a journey. It's you remembering who you are so that you can connect wholly and fully to that aspect of your being. So that's what metaphysics is the map, and paradoxical Heka is the way that you would do it and live it.
Great, great, great. So, thank you so much for that. That was a very helpful insight into the entire concept of physics, and I agree with you. So, on that note, Reginald, can you explain the essence of paradoxical Heka and how can you explain that how you first encountered or experienced these principles in your own life?
Yeah, it's just Artita. I have lived a life where, for me, I've always said I did not want to ever look back on my life and wonder what if. What if I had a tried this or what if I had a tried that, and look back on my life and regret. So that means that I take chances, and I really step out on the edge of my comfort zone in a lot of ways because I tried different things. So one of the things I did was I was a school teacher for a while, and I literally quit my school teaching job to start coaching and doing what I'm doing now. That was a big risk because I was leaving a paycheck to where I was going to be doing something where I had no guarantees. So metaphysics was born from really me navigating and how I deal with just the ups and downs of life. How do I deal with that? How do I deal with the depression and the fears and stuff like that? And then paradoxical Heka is something that's come later, where now I literally have a process that really helps us with human transformation. So now, instead of trying to fight fears, we reconcile the fears with our essence. And then in that way, you create peace within yourself.
Great. So, yes, that is exactly how our listeners can also implement these practices in reality. And it's fascinating how alternative frameworks can reshape our understanding of reality itself, like you just mentioned. Moving on, Reginald, chemetaphysics suggests a layered or hidden structure to reality. So, how does this influence our daily decision making or personal growth?
Yeah, so the bottom line is from the ancient perspective, we are creators of our reality. And there's an ancient saying that probably many of us have heard at some point along the way, that we've heard the ancients say that life is an illusion. And a lot of people take that as saying life they were saying that life was not real in some way, and that's not what it meant. They are not saying that, we cannot touch, feel, and all of that. But what they were saying was the illusion is that we are powerless of circumstances in our lives, powerless over circumstances in our life. But life from a Kemetic perspective is actually the projection of our inner vibrational essence. So if we think of the idea of an analysis, and usually an analysis is about you taking a whole, breaking it apart, and then looking at the different parts. From a Kemetic perspective, the wholeness is our vibrational being, our essence. That's the whole being that we are. And then that essence, that vibrational essence, is projected outside of us as the people and life and events. The people, life, and events are what we analyze to figure out what is happening within us. So life becomes feedback in that sense. Life is not happening to us, it's happening through us. So that's how Chemetaphysics and Paradoxical Heka looks at that.
What a great way to say life is happening through us. That is so true. And yes, I am sure that our listeners will also agree with it. But Reginald, could you share an example of someone applying these concepts to create tangible change?
Yeah, so that's where, like, so for, let's just say, from the metaphysical level, we might have, let's talk about money, because a lot of times we struggle with abundance, many of us. I know I do. We that's something that we can struggle with. But showing having a lack of abundance means that we are off balance between giving and receiving. Okay. So a lot of times people have, and I know for me, one of the difficulties is I love giving. I can do that, but I don't like to be or have to ask people for anything, you know? So sometimes there's an imbalance for me. Well, that can show up in a lack of abundance in different areas of your life. If you can give, but receiving is the other half of the equation. You have to have a balance there. So you think of it in that context. If life is showing you that you are not abundant, then how do you realign and get back in balance? And that's how we would use paradoxical Heka to get back in balance. Okay. But from a metaphysics perspective, your life is showing you, if you're not abundant, then that is something that you are basically misaligned with. So life is going to show you who you are being from within by what's being projected outside of you.
Definitely, definitely. And that idea really bridges the abstract theory with practical transformation. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Moving on, Reginald, energy and consciousness can feel intangible sometimes. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do you help people engage with these ideas in a way that feels grounded?
A beautiful, beautiful question. And the way that you would do that is understand that, first of all, everything is conscious. Everything, if it wasn't conscious, we couldn't even experience it. Okay. So the way that we do that through metaphysics is understanding that everything is conscious and that you have a will that acts on consciousness. Okay. So when I say a will, in a lot of circles, spiritual circles of manifestation and stuff like that, they talk about setting intentions. Okay. Well, that's how you direct your consciousness. So whenever you set an intention, and a lot of times, unfortunately, many people do this by default. They don't even think about it consciously. It's just the way that they just live their life. They might speak negative self-talk to themselves and not realize that they're literally telling their consciousness to go and search for whatever can confirm that negative self-talk. For instance, people might say something like, "What is wrong with me?" Okay. As soon as you say, "What is wrong with me?" You just directed your consciousness to go out and look for everything that is going to confirm what is wrong with you. You've literally set your intention to direct your consciousness and energy to confirm what is wrong with you. Okay. And that's how we operate in society. So, from a practical perspective, when you think about dealing with consciousness, think about how you are directing or willfully directing your consciousness's energy through your thoughts. So, anytime that you set an intention, you're literally setting a frame for your consciousness and energy to operate within. Okay. So that's a practical way to look at that. So when you wake up in the morning, what do you say to yourself? Man, this is going to be a terrible day. Many people do that. They just framed their entire day unwittingly. Okay. But you have the power to reframe it as something else. I wake up in the morning and I say, today is my temple. Okay. To set my frame. Everything, every action, and everything I do is to align and balance with my truth. I set my frame. Today is my temple. And then I set my intention. And everything in that day is just set. I can set it one time, and every day is now set in that frame. So now you can literally set up. Now consciousness is not abstract anymore. Energy is no longer abstract. It is how you frame how energy is going to interact with you and penetrate you as your life throughout the entire day, if that makes sense.
Totally. That actually makes a lot of sense. And how you said that we only have the power to make energy and consciousness tangible from something intangible. So, on that note, could you, I'm sure that a lot of listeners would now want to apply these in their daily lives. So, could you suggest them some simple exercises or perspectives that a beginner could explore?
Sure. Let's do some paradoxical Heka. Okay. So how do we deal with that? And let's just say we have some fears that might some anxieties that we might be dealing with on a daily basis, and many of us do. Okay. Let's just say let's go back to money and abundance. Let's say that we might be afraid that we might not have money to pay our bills at the end of the month. Okay. How do we deal with that? And in a lot of ways, what society will say is do some affirmations. I know that I am going to have money at the end of the month. Money just comes to me at the end of the month. Money comes to me all the time. Okay. Those are affirmations. Okay. But there's a problem. It's only one side of the equation, and your mind really doesn't believe that because you're already afraid and you're just trying to brute force the fear away from yourself. Okay. It becomes impractical because you can't override the fear. There's just, you might can do it accidentally, but with paradoxical Heka, this is how we would do this. So we would take the fear, but recognize that in the universe, we already are abundant. We are the source in human form. Okay. So I would say something like, even though I have this fear that I might not be able to pay my bills at the end of the month, I honor that fear and recognize that I am the source of abundance of the universe in human form. Okay. So what I did was in one breath, because Heka is about using sound to basically penetrate your energetic field and breath. And then I'm using both the fear and the essence together in that breath to code my field and balance it. But what happens is that your subconscious mind cannot hold both those truths at the same time. So it automatically organizes around the higher truth, which is you as an aspect of the universe, an abundant aspect of the universe. That brings you into alignment and with peace. You no longer have the anxiety or dealing with the anxiety anymore. So that's one way is that.
That was very helpful, basically, to implement these practices in our real life. to help us in our personal, professional lives. So, thank you so much for sharing that. Reginald, many listeners may find paradoxical systems challenging to grasp because it's a very complex idea. But how do you encourage exploration without overwhelming them?
Yeah. So just understand paradox basically means it is this and that. Okay. So in a lot of instances, when we think about paradox, people think of it as a contradiction, but in actuality, it just means that both things really exist. So anytime we're talking about a paradox, you're not trying to banish one side or the other. You're acknowledging both sides. So what I did in that example was I acknowledged the fear and I even honored the fear, but then I anchored it to the essence of who I am. Okay. That's a simple way to do. How you'll know that it's working, Archita, is when you ever had a chill come over your body when you're like, you might listen to a great bit of music or something, or you see something happen in a movie that's, you really resonate with, and it's like, wow, and you get this chill come over you. That is literally your body of reconciling what you were dealing with. That's literally a paradox happening within you and rearranging your energetic system. That's how you'll know that this is working when you use the paradox.
Yeah, and it shows that even complex ideas can be accessible if approached with intention. So, yeah, very true, very true. But
To me, this, Archita, to me, this is not, because we can get into complex ideas that basically don't, like a lot of spiritual systems, they might say these ideas, and I'll call them word salad. Okay, because they speak a lot of really, great words and put them to string them together, toss them together, but when you really analyze them, they don't mean anything. For instance, the one word we might think about is surrender. Just surrender. What does that mean? What do you do? Most people think surrender is like sit around, be passive, just let things happen. But from a paradoxical Heka perspective, surrender is actually the active process of creating that paradox, using both poles to create the paradox. And then in that instance, you are not fighting against whatever it was that you are dealing with. In that sense, you surrender and you can be accepting of what is happening through the paradox. It becomes an active process rather than just this abstract idea of just surrender. Okay, well, right now my money is not coming. I can't surrender. Where's my money? You follow what I'm saying? So in those instances, to me, that's what makes spirituality complex, is when people have these concepts that you can't really make applicable in your life.
it's basically the fear in them before even trying it out.
Yeah, if they already kind of putting forth that it's going to be complex, you already said in your intentions, it's complex.
Yes. So, but the question is, does embracing paradox itself become a tool for growth?
Absolutely. Yeah, because you're literally have gaining a tool that you have the ability to reconcile the all those fears and anxieties, or self-love, lack of confidence. You literally gain a tool that you can reconcile all those things, but you reconcile them based on and tied to your essence as a whole and divine being.
Definitely. And accepting uncertainty sometimes opens doors to insight and creativity also.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, finally, Reginald, for those curious but cautious, what mindset or shift or first step would you recommend to begin engaging with Heka or chemetaphysics?
So first, one of the first shifts I would say is that you have to switch the idea that you're broken. You're not broken, you're whole. Okay? You are divine. So if you can switch from the idea of the ontology of brokenness to the ontology of wholeness, that is the first step. And then you can start to operate from your place of power, recognizing who you are unapologetically and authentically. When you can do that, you can start to build a foundation of different things to do. It becomes powerful.
Yes, yes, definitely. And I'm very sure that it will help our listeners further in life also. Sometimes the smallest intentional action sparks the deepest transformation, and chemetaphysics is one example of that.
Absolutely.
So definitely. So Reginald, before we wrap it up, because the time is already up, can you tell our listeners how can they connect with you?
Yeah, sure. They can find me at reginaldmartin.substack.com. And that's where they can connect with me.
Okay, great. So I'll have all the details in the show listings for our listeners. So, Reginald, thank you for sharing your insights and expanding our perspective on consciousness and energy. For listeners, stay curious, embrace paradox, and explore the hidden dimensions of your own reality.